Today I wanted to talk a little bit more about biology and brain chemistry because you guys seem to enjoy that content, and wanting more of it. So we're gonna dive a little into some of the nuance. Go ahead and subscribe, give some thumbs up, give some comments below. I'd love to interact with you guys in the comments. What's working for you? Is this interesting? What might you be interested in me sharing about, in addition to the things we already share about? So, what if I told you that narcissism isn't just in your head, it's also in your cells? So, we're talking about oxidative stress and how it impacts the brain. Now, in the research about brain function, brain, structures, brain chemistry, and so forth, narcissists certainly have some differences that we find consistently across the board with people with NPD. In some of my other videos, we've gone into some of that, the different structures in the brain that are bigger or smaller and how that shows up in terms of behavior. But this one I want to talk about was more systemic and more in the cells themselves. And this is the idea of oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is, you might have heard of free radicals or something like that. That's part of what oxidative stress is. So oxidation is a chemical reaction, and our body does millions of oxidative reactions every moment of every day. It's the other side of what's called a reduction. So there's reduction, oxidation. And basically, it's just electrons moving from a cell into a cell, that type of thing, or a molecule. I'm sorry. Molecules gaining electrons or losing electrons. And that's what oxidation is, or reduction. But oxidative stress is, there are these types of molecules in our body called free radicals, and they are more unstable molecules. And when they've lost an electron, and so they basically are running around the body in a charged state. Now, I don't want to get too far into the chemistry here, but basically they are looking to pull an electron off of some other molecule to balance themselves out. But when that happens, they start to destabilize the structures that those other molecules are involved in. And so, like in our cells, that can disrupt the cell membrane, which is a big problem, or some of the functions of the cell. Oxidative stress is one of the big things that's pointed at for the processes we associate with aging. So, the breakdown of our skin, and elasticity, the breakdown of our joints, our organs not working as well. There's a strong correlation and a lot of theories about how oxidative stress is a big part of that. And when we smoke, like cigarette smoking or pollution or things like that, they cause oxidative stress in the body. That's why we get those negative health effects from that. Another way that oxidative stress can be increased is through our thoughts or our psychological stresses. Because really, our nervous system, which modulates and moderates all the stresses and helps us try to adapt to them, to our nervous system, it doesn't matter if it's a physical stress, so like falling down the stairs or getting hit by a car, a chemical stress, like smoking cigarettes or eating something that's poisonous, or pollution in the air, or mental psychological stress, like we're afraid, anxious, and having a stress response. So when they study the brains and the chemistry of narcissists, people with NPD, they find that narcissists have an elevated, above normal level of a particular type of oxidative marker, which is called the 8-OH-DG chemical. And I'm going to just share a little bit from a study I found about that. And so this is Lee et al. In 2020. And this title is Narcissistic and Borderline Personality Disorders, Relationship with Oxidative Stress. And what they found was that individuals diagnosed with NPD exhibited significantly elevated plasma 8-OH-DG, that chemical I was talking about, levels compared to healthy controls and those with even other personality disorders like antisocial or avoidant. And NPD, narcissist personality disorder, predicted higher levels of this chemical independently of other co-founders. And they found similar findings in borderline personality, which is another cluster B disorder. And what ends up happening is these elevated levels of the 8-OH-DG are associated with impaired emotional awareness and disgust sensitivity, which are traits that are seen in NPD's interpersonal difficulties. For example, or for instance, a higher level of 8-OH-DG correlated with lower accuracy in recognizing other people's emotions. So the authors who did this study hypothesized that chronic oxidative stress in NPD may stem from heightened emotional reactivity to perceived threats, like criticism or rejection, leading to an increase in what's called ROS, or reactive oxygen species, so another chemical, which produces the oxidative stress, to ROS production and cellular damage. This biological marker supports viewing NPD as having a physiologic component, potentially shifting it from a purely character disorder to a treatable medical condition akin to borderline personality disorder. The study also noted the oxidative stress might explain NPD's comorbidity with mood disorders and resistance to therapy due to underlying neurobiological factors. So what I think is interesting about that, in addition to just it's interesting to learn about the chemistry and how some of the behaviors and the things that are consistent across the board with people with NPD aren't just character flaws or condition patterns from our childhood only, they don't just live only in the psychology. There's actually a biophysical, a chemical, and a cellular component to that is caused certainly by the perceived threat, but then compounds that, makes it harder for the narcissist to then deal with the next perceived threat in an effective, properly emotional manner. And so, I mean, a couple of things about this, in addition to, like I said, the interest, there's, there's some things we can do as a narcissist to help prevent the negative effects of this oxidative stress, because it does do things like break down your cell tissues, cause aging, all that kind of stuff. So things that like a healthy diet, I talked in a different video about the carnivore diet and ketogenic diets and how beneficial those have been for mental health challenges, including NPD. And one of the ways is that a ketogenic diet is actually an antioxidant diet, or one that helps our body deal with this type of oxidation more efficiently and effectively. But also stress management techniques like mindfulness or even physical exercise are going to be beneficial, because those are also things that have been shown to reduce the oxidative stress, that ROS, that reactive oxygen species, and the damage from that. And so I think it's interesting because, no one issue only can be solved by one direction, one plan of attack, right? So becoming aware, having therapy, having strategies to increase your mindfulness and your interactivity and, build that empathy muscle. And a lot of the things we've talked about in some of the other videos are all valuable and important. But it's really cool and important to understand there's multiple angles that you can attack from to improve your overall satisfaction and ability to have a satisfying life with satisfying relationships. And one that might not be obvious is really taking care of this oxidative stress issue. So again, all the things we think of that are beneficial for our health: drinking lots of water, eating nutrient dense foods, getting good sleep, physical exercise, but also mindfulness techniques, meditation, breathing techniques. I love Wim Hof breathing. If you can look that one up if you don't know about that. And these type of things that help everybody's mental state. Actually, we know now, because we've studied the biochemistry, that it actually helps to reduce that oxidative damage, which then will in turn allow the narcissist to have a better chance to develop and strengthen those new muscles like the empathy muscle. So reducing your oxidative stress might not change your operating system in and of itself, and certainly by itself isn't enough to make a difference. However, it can help, and everything we can add to our arsenal of how to help and how to make the changes we want in life to have a more satisfying life are valuable to understand and implement. So make sure you give some thumbs up, some likes, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments, share this with somebody who this might be useful for. What do you think about that? Have you tried these things? Does it make sense to you? What other topics might you be interested in me talking about as well? All right, we'll see you guys next time. Take care.